Let's do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States, to the states, nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Roll, can you please state your name?
Kim Gibbs.
Cynthia Batty.
Margot Rain, Kristen Zumar, Marison. Okay. There were two sets of minutes that were included in this package. Are there any changes to the minutes from September 25th?
Well, there was the public meeting, and then there was the.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't have.
Well, the first meeting minutes are August 28th. Yeah, the second page.
Well, in the order they're presented, I guess we really should do them in order, so the August 28th meeting, was there any changes to that meeting minutes? Do I have a motion to approve those minutes as distributed? Do I have a second?
Yeah,
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I abstained.
Okay. And for the minutes on September 25th, I believe on the first page, Mr. Gross said that elected officials should not attend any meetings, is that correct? So that could just be corrected. Any other corrections to those minutes? Do I have a motion to approve them as distributed?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Listen into it. Anyone from the public have any comments on one more? Oh, it's the third one?
yeah, it's for the public meeting,
Those are two for the
it's a
20.
public hearing, yes.
Okay,
That's what I was saying before, I got.
got it. Okay. For the public hearing meeting, are there any changes for the minute? Do I have an approval to approve this
I
distributed?
moved to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
it.
Okay. Okay, all the minutes are approved.
If I could ask if you would repeat who makes the motion and who seconds, I can't hear anything.
Oh,
I got that one, but for further motions,
I could do that.
thank you.
Public comments on the meeting agenda. Do any of our three people want to have any comments?
Yes, Bill Gross, 1301 13th Street. I guess first a couple of housekeeping.
Oh, you keep your turn.
Oh, I can, hold on.
3 minutes. Sorry, Hal.
Okay.
Issues that I'd like to address, but first I'd like to thank everyone that's sitting on this commission for doing what you do, but I wouldn't say I beg, but it is the planning commission's duty to look out for the best interests of the residents of the city of Newcastle, including, like I've said many a times for a few years, you can suggest to city council putting in force a resolution for building moratorium. You got flooding. I've got pictures that I can provide from every entrance of this city. Traffic going at least a mile long on any given point. City council took it on itself to basically take out the 6th Street light, which is going to create a bigger log jam. Commissioner Batty basically said traffic in the city itself seems to get channeled into the city because people are looking for shortcuts. You put another 1,000 units up and down Route 9, the emergency evacuation route. You can't evacuate. It was said in council, even when it wasn't raining, the water flooded that space. So I think it's your duty to stop the building or put it on hold. You can say, well, if someone owns a property, they can do what they want. No, they have to go by what's governed by the city and work within the guidelines and what's passed. The last developer that came in to give a proposal basically said, affordable housing? No, we're looking to exceed affordable housing, go higher than what the Garrison charges. And you guys still passed it. You know, you constantly contradict what your own commission decides on, including the issue with the visuals of a project that's being submitted. You admitted that it helped you, helped me, helped others. So I just think you need to be consistent. You can have your own views because you're individuals, but please, I beg you to come together in more of a unified fashion for the residents and not for developers. Because Sean Tucker consistently comes in and is the chosen attorney because the developers know he will get it pushed through. And last but not least, elected officials should not be.
3 minutes.
I listen.
My fault, that's my regular one, so I don't know.
Any other comments? Hearing none. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the chair and the vice chair, which I guess we will make an informal election. How do we want to do that? Yeah.
Can we do one and not the other? Can we do just the chair, not the vice chair of this meeting?
I guess you could. I mean, there's a variety of ways that chairs are appointed. You can typically the person presiding over the meeting that asks if there's any nominations. And the board speaks to, you know, someone nominates someone. And keep it open until you're sure that the nominations are complete. And once you're sure that the nominations are complete, then you take a vote. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay.
Are we allowed to discuss it before we do that?
Sure. I mean, I don't, I don't know all the parliamentary procedures
These
for
are
Robert
just to
Rules.
nominate.
I nominate Margot for chair.
The chair.
You second?
It doesn't need to be a second.
Oh,
No.
okay.
Good.
So there's we have Margot Ray has been nominated.
Anybody else want to nominate someone?
I would just like to say that I'd like to also nominate a vice chair, because life gets in the way and we still need to have somebody helping to set the agendas and things like that. So I don't see any reason why we should wait. We could barely get a quorum for any of these meetings. Come on, people, we're here, let's do it.
Are you okay with that? What was the
Let's,
reason for waiting? to get
let's do
reviewed?
one at a time.
Yeah, but I
Take
mean,
care of
we
that,
have
then we'll
nominated
discuss.
I understand that, but I think we need to do it in a context that we agree on. Now, if nobody agrees with me that we should do a vice chair, then fine, but,
I think if the person who is going to be vice chair who would be vice chair is present, then that's fine.
Are there any more nominations for chair?
She's saying, please, your comment.
are you willing to do it? Are you able?
I am willing to do it.
Okay, bless you.
So I guess at this point nominations are closed. All in favor?
Fine.
Okay.
Did you vote for yourself?
Did you get that?
No.
Yes.
Thank you, Margot.
You're very welcome.
If you want a vice chair and you want me to be your vice chair, if you want to be your vice chair.
Does Bree wanna do it? You don't wanna speak for Bree?
Oh, that's
I
right.
won't speak
She
for,
was vice chair before, that's right,
I won't speak for her.
but she was before.
She will.
I can't speak for Bree,
Well, I'm, yeah,
but we do have a forum and we could vote. Can you nominate yourself?
don't know the answer to that.
Well,
I will nominate Commissioner Batty as vice chair.
I'll give it up if she wants it, how's that for a deal?
we can always change it.
Yeah,
Do I have any other nominations for vice chair? Dead silent. I believe nominations are closed. All in favor of something? Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair.
thank you.
Okay. And if everybody, before you leave tonight, if I can have everyone's phone number, just so I can know how to get in touch with people, that would be very helpful.
Don't we have a thing for that, Kathy?
She can't hear tonight, she's having. Do we have a list of people's phone numbers?
The office does.
Okay,
We used to have a list of everybody's name, their tenure date and
Yeah,
their address and their email and their phone numbers for within our group,
Yeah, wasn't someone supposed to share that?
but that has,
Kat, get that list from,
Lisa Johnson.
okay, I'll email Lisa tomorrow.
okay. That would be good.
Okay. All right, we have a discussion of rental versus home ownership, affordable housing and trends, and Chris, you said you have some information from the Delaware State Housing Authority.
Yeah, and you know, based on all of your these discussions at your previous meetings, I thought it would be helpful to reach out to someone at the staff level at the Delaware State Housing Authority. So I spoke to a Karen Horton. She's the principal planner in policy and planning at the Delaware State Housing Authority. And she sits on Plus. She's the one that makes comments on development projects on behalf of the authority. And she's you know, a well-known planner in Delaware. And I spoke to her and she would be willing to come to the November meeting and make a presentation about housing needs, rentals versus home ownership. We're going to kick around the draft presentation before she comes. I also you know, said, you know, it would be good in November, but if you have a site plan that will take up a lot of time. I know that we have not had a site plan here in this planning commission and this relative form of members. And depending on what else is on the agenda, Karen is willing to come. If you, for example, if the battery comes in with the site plan, that may take some time.
Yeah.
And it may not, besides the time, it may not be an appropriate mixture of agenda items to have the Delaware
Right.
State Housing Authority talking about home ownership and rental units and a housing shortage, and you have a housing development plan on the agenda. That doesn't, that wouldn't, that doesn't sit well. So assuming if there's no other item or you know, relatively large item on the agenda, she's willing to come to the November meeting. I would also say that she's going to be neutral. We can't relate anything that she's telling us to any particular project that's going to come before you or has a chance to come in before you. It will be in just informational.
That's what we need.
And,
Thank
and
you.
one other thing that I've realized, and, because we've had so many things up in the air, in the city, I don't think you've ever received a presentation about the downtown development district.
No, and it's funny, I was thinking about that today when I was getting ready for this meeting.
And, Karen and I will have to figure out how much of her presentation, relates to the DDD, the Downtown Development District. Because, the Delaware State Housing Authority is the agency that administers the rebate program, associated with the Downtown Development District. So she is an expert on DDDs and what it's done in other cities and other municipalities. So we'll have to work to see, how much is going to be the broad data about housing and how much we want to concentrate on the DDD program specific, well, what it is in general, and then in the city of Newcastle, you have an area, you are a DDD municipality. And there are people that have taken advantage of that program in the city. And Karen is in the middle of all that for the housing authority.
Do you know, as a city, if we're not taking full advantage of that program? Is there more that the city?
I'm thinking we're not, because when I brought it up last meeting, nobody knew anything about it.
Well, I don't remember that. We wrote the plan on behalf of the city, and made the application. So it's not on the agenda, but we can, get into it. But real briefly, the DDD is a set geographic area. And, the, program just allowed an increase in acreage. So, I'm relaying this as part of the rental and home ownership and affordable housing. Part of the DDD program is to address home ownership needs and housing needs. So the city has a pending request into the state cabinet committee for an increase in acreage, to increase the acreage by about 10 acres to 95 acres. We had to deal with a subdivision issue that we're in the middle of dealing with, that held up that boundary expansion. And the General Assembly has allowed another increase in acreage. So on top of what the city already has pending, there's another potential for another about 10 acres to be brought into the DDD. Oddly enough, the legislation that deals with the DDD program doesn't have a role for the planning commission. When we first had the DDD adopted with the city, it didn't come through the planning commission. It was a plan that was adopted by city council. It has to be approved by the state cabinet committee on planning issues. So that's a long-winded way of saying that someone, an expert from the State Housing Authority, can be here in November to give you a overview of housing needs in Delaware, Newcastle County. She's very familiar with the city of Newcastle. And then we can to provide new information on the existing DDD in the city and the potential for expansion.
Can we add topics we want to hear about specifically to this?
Mhm.
So for example, the DDD, as it stands right now, really benefits people who have money, because to buy one of those old houses and fix it is for wealthy people, or at least upper middle class people. In reading the material that we were given prior to this, the people who need housing are not those people. So even though we could expand DDD and that's all great, what I'm more interested in is how we could work with the state to incent the creation of affordable housing, which is going to be a public-private partnership type activity. I don't think developers intentionally develop low-income housing. And there's a lot of historical failures. The Pruitt-Igoe project is probably the most notable. Pruitt Igo, if you don't know about it, I forget what city it was in. but
Oh, not
it was
here.
St. Louis. It was a sad thing. They made these beautiful, beautiful projects, beautiful, and the people all moved in and everything was wonderful and everyone's life was made better for about a year until lights burned out and they didn't get replaced and there was no money to maintain them. Because if you build common housing like that, apartment type blocks, you have to maintain them. It costs a lot of money. And nobody had a budget for that. And it just went downhill and it became derelict and, bad element came into it and they eventually blew it up. It's a sad story. PBS has done a documentary on it. So, and I'm sure everybody says, oh, we do this great stuff and then nobody appreciates it. That's not actually true. The people who lived there were interviewed and they didn't feel that way. It was a failure of management. So as we look at how to create nice, affordable housing for people, we have to have a plan to maintain it as well. So I'd like to hear public ship, however we can do it, because we could sit here and jawbone about it until the end of time, or kingdom come, whichever comes first, and nothing will happen. So if we actually want something to happen because of our work here, this is how we have to just pick up these ideas and push on them. So
That there is, or there was, I don't know if it's still in force, there was a program, I think, in one of the lower counties, I would say down by Smyrna, but I don't know, I don't think it was available in Newcastle, where there was a company building friendly homes, and there was a lot of money from the state. I know somebody's considering it. They, at this point in time, it's just not the right time in their life for that, but they would help you with an extremely low interest loan. And then you would get a loan for a down payment with 0 interest, and you didn't have to pay that back until you sold the house. And that would help you with your down
that's
payment.
attractive, yeah.
And it was like solar panels on the house and, eco-friendly housing and environmental friendly. And I think that's more, and it was affordable. It was for specifically geared to people not in the upper middle class. It was, for the lower, I was probably not even what is considered middle class. So I can try to find out what that company was, but I believe they partnered with the state.
Yeah.
And they, because there's a lot of money available from the state and special housing interest rates.
Where's that?
The person I know was looking in Smyrna, and they would actually help you find a way to build the house. So it was actually you were building a new house.
So it wasn't necessarily limited to Smyrna, that just happened to be where your friend was looking?
Yes.
Well, Karen Horton would be, she is
She'd be able to
knowledgeable
answer
about
all
the-
the-
If I got that information to you, you could ask her to include that information.
No, that would be good. And I think stuff like that, both for single family and for multifamily dwellings is important because while I think this data is almost incomprehensible the way that it's presented, you clearly get the view that the area median income is not supporting people buying a home here. It's just not.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And when it's even in Tazewell County, which is wealthier than the rest of Delaware, there's still a very low percentage of people who could reasonably afford to buy a house under the current circumstances. And interest rates right now are not friendly for that either. So more information is great, but let's talk about action to encourage that. And I'd be interested in her perspective too on what the city can do around, we have another dollar store where we could have had a health clinic down the street on Newcastle Avenue. Why isn't there something there that's focused on people and creating an environment for people to be able to walk to medical care and not have to have a car or whatever, it's, I'm all in favor of capitalism, but sometimes you have to think differently if you're gonna bring up your whole city environment. So So I'd like to hear more about what we can do. You know, can't legislate it, I know, but what can we do to encourage a different, different way of thinking about those kinds of things?
And what, I don't think this is a question for the state housing authority. I might have to figure out how we can answer this. But it would be really good to know what the planning commission's legally allowed to do. What are we really able to do? I mean, I initially got the sense that it wasn't much other than reviewing plans. So I want to go to somebody who can clarify that for us.
Well, that would be, Max Walton, the city solicitor, and myself. I mean, it's kind of a broad question, and the easy answer is your primary role is to develop a comprehensive plan.
Okay.
That's the primary function of any planning committee that guides land use policy, that guides the zoning, and in most states that's falls on the shoulders of the planning commission. You're constrained, I mean, that's the way it's written in Delaware code. The planning commission prepares the comprehensive plan, has to make a recommendation to the legislative body. Ultimately, it's always the legislative body that has the final say.
And is that for us, the city council or the
City
state?
council.
Okay.
And once the comprehensive plan is in place, the state law requires that the zoning, that is this code that has the R1 zone and the R2 zone and the downtown gateway district, that the zoning has to be consistent with that. If necessary, the zoning needs to be changed to become consistent with the comprehensive plan. And that usually takes the form of a comprehensive rezoning,
Mhm.
which is changing the zoning maps to conform to the future land use plan and the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
That's sort of the meat of the planning, well. And when any zoning is changed to become in compliance with the comprehensive plan, that of course has to be forwarded to the city council with a recommendation from the planning commission.
Okay.
And then, of course, you have your other sort of, boots on the ground's responsibility of reviewing and approving subdivisions and site plans. And as you know, you have responsibilities relative to making recommendations to city council on amendments to the zoning ordinance. And making recommendations to the Board of Adjustment on special exceptions.
As we consider these things, can we send questions to you for her and then you guys can decide whether it's appropriate or not? Because I have other things, like, for example, what kind of housing is the state recommending now for middle income, lower income housing? Is it single family dwellings? Is it multifamily? Is it large developments? What are people thinking? What has experience shown is the right way to go? So, because then we can think more about how we might solve that with zoning or whatever. So.
I would like to just bring up a concern about not only housing, but the increase in the city population in general, because that's going to change, as we know, the resources, the city resources. We only have so many ambulances. Goodwill has to, and we have, luckily, we are very good distance to Holloway Terrace or Wilmington Manor, and they're available to us, but there are also our city police, which we already know from previous, that they are understaffed and that they would actually have to hire to accommodate people at the Lucas Drive as well. So it's not just, being able to offer affordable housing, which unfortunately, these apartments are not going to be, and we can't control that.
No.
We can't, we don't have a legal right to control them, I get that. But to also be able to make sure that our citizens have access to all the resources they should have access to from within the city. And the concern I have is the possibility of almost overpopulation within the city. So, and some of that could be resolved by, instead of 394 apartments, townhouses. You know, I don't know what the average number of people per apartment is versus people per house, but obviously 394 townhouse or apartments versus maybe 40 townhouses, it's gonna be a significantly less number of people impacting and getting, services that they need. And we wanna make sure that it's not quantity of people, but also quality of life within our city, because I think we have all enjoyed the quality of life that our city services has given us. And I would hate to see some of our city services be outsourced to other companies because we've grown too large.
Well,
And that's
how does that index to property tax and other taxes that would offset these things?
Yeah, I mean, and a big thing, again, I think Bree mentioned wanting to know, just a fiscal impact of another apartment complex. So I just want to bring up that, it's not just offering affordable housing, because we can't control what people sell the houses at, we can't control what they offer as far as rental. But if we can bring in, we just have to be leery of overpopulation and fast growth. And it should definitely, growth within the city should be mindful, and it should be for the good of the city in general. And that's just
Agreed.
one of my concerns, is just what we already have approved, and then if the 394 other units get approved, how many people are coming into the city? And are we able to support them with our services and with, what our fire and police and other services are able to provide? It's a big wear and tear on, hopefully, the parks, because we want people to use them. I mean, that's why they're there.
Yeah.
But then that, things have to be replaced more frequently, that type of thing.
But
And
we should be also getting increased taxes with
Yeah.
those people moving
Which we
in.
looked at. for the
well,
last
with the
5 years.
Lukens, it ended up being a wash.
We should keep it general and not talk about specific projects.
But, I just think we need to be mindful of not only the number of houses, but the population in general that's projected to move into these homes.
I mean, certainly, in your role in reviewing plans or making recommendations on rezonings or special exceptions, the impact to services is in the wheelhouse of the planning commission to consider. Special exceptions are always somewhat difficult to pin down who's responsible for evaluating what. Typically that comes from the Board of Adjustment. That, they may ask for the impacts to city services that you could have asked for here, or recommended that it be provided to the Board of Adjustment. And we did that relative to, I'm speaking about a specific project, but I'm just using it as an example. So I recommend that the traffic study be submitted prior to the Board of Adjustment. So that is an impact. You could have done the same for impacts to fire, impacts to the police. You can do that in your role in reviewing development plans, in your various roles in reviewing development plans.
This is where data matters, though, and in the thing that you sent us, housing unit types compared 2010 to 2021. 58% of all housing units in Delaware in 2021 were single-family dwellings. 7% were duplexes. 3% were 50 or more unit buildings. So you know, this is why I want the data, because you can cut it different ways, like how many people are being accommodated by these individual houses versus buildings. We can't know more without that, but I think that it's important to note that 3% of the projects in 2021 in Delaware were
Multifamily.
were 50 or more units. 5 to 49 units was 11%. So from a individual structure perspective, it's pretty small. From the perspective that you were just bringing up of how many people are actually going to be in these things, it could look quite different. And the problem with just looking at this data is you can't see that.
So
So
not only that, but the dynamic of our city is most of the downtown houses are not single family. They're connected, they're homes.
yeah,
And so that, while it addresses the larger picture of that area, unfortunately, it doesn't address our area.
Yeah.
And that's another,
And you might be able to, it said on the website that the data would be made available. Maybe when you talk to Karen, you can ask her when the raw
yeah, if
data,
we could get the raw data on this,
the housing needs assessment.
because, you know, we could
Can we drill
correlate
it down?
on this.
I would think by either census tract or zip, well, maybe if you can get it by census tract.
Yeah, this is all,
I think the closest it comes is by county.
Yeah, it's by county.
Well, in
Yeah.
that, but I gotta think they might have, there's underlying data that we might be.
if you, this is similar data to, I don't know all of it, but, most comprehensive plans, you know, have this, type of data
Yeah.
at the geography, as close as the geography that one can get to the municipality that the comp plan is dealing with. Now, it doesn't deal with, this comp plan doesn't have,
I think it's 2020 census data in it.
Well, apropos of that, the population growth in 2020 has fallen significantly from the prior 20 years. So actually, now, where are they living is the important question. Where did they go? They all moved near UD, for example, or are they all, you know, working?
Is that, well, I'm sorry. what page
Is that
are you looking at?
Newcastle Town?
This is page 13. This is not broken out by county. This is just population growth and percent of change.
For the state.
Yeah, it's for the state.
Yeah, so you don't know if those people are downstate or
We
upstate.
don't know, and that's a problem.
But
You
in
can't
general,
interpret
she's saying the population in the state decreased.
it as decreasing.
the rate of change is decreasing.
No.
The rate of growth is decreasing.
Yeah.
Not, I don't think
Okay.
the population did not decrease.
Yeah, increased.
And there, some of the stuff that Tim sent through, provided correlation for that, particularly around, COVID, what COVID did in terms of people relocating and being able to work from home, not having to be in any particular place. And that was part of the generational study. So I just looked through a bunch of these different things and tried to put together in my mind a picture of what's happening. Some of these things I didn't think we could, if they were about the whole United States, I didn't think we could, you know, relate them to us, right? But mobility, one of the things that the Harvard report said was that mobility was driving demand for more rentals, for example, which could be relevant to us depending on how we want to slice and dice that data and look at it in our own situation. So if you only took the Harvard, which is all of US, insight, and I think that guy is probably pretty well known. I saw a lot of his other articles on the website. Not because of family wealth. I mean, not having homes, from reading this data, drives down family wealth and legacy wealth. But at the other end of it, if people want to move, rentals are a better way for them to do that. There was some dumbass article in there, don't put that in the minutes. Why rent is better than buy, and I could have written it, I felt that was dumb. But the Harvard one made it really clear why people are doing these things, and that's real, you know. we moved here because I didn't have to be anywhere. It was a little before COVID. But, you know, what, and in fact, minutes before we moved here, somebody mooted in my firm that I might have to go and show up in Connecticut. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I already bought a house in Delaware, you know, so people are doing things like that. And that's happening more and more. So anyway, I'm just trying to show how all these things fit together, because I think we need to look at it holistically. And some of the generational stuff was fantastic, you know, which generation is buying what, and they had, in some of these, they had cross-sectional breakdowns by race as well. So this is what I'm saying. We need to look more at this stuff and then try to somehow correlate it to where we live.
Tim, you haven't had a lot to say. What are your thoughts?
I am looking at tabular data from the Delaware Population Consortium. So
Okay.
when I have something to say, I'll say something.
Thank you for calling me out. So yeah, I do agree with what you were saying earlier, and I do think that having this information in advance, we do have the control in our hands to make the recommendations that are necessary for the city when we're taking a holistic view and taking into account all of these matters that we were just discussing, so that we can have a true path forward, and we're not trying to overpopulate the city. We're not trying to mismanage the, you know, emergency services and things like that, because what our vote does matter, our recommendations do matter. So I think this is going to be super helpful in the long run.
And I'm just gonna add one cautionary note. So, you know, having data about the specific demographics of housing trends and affordability and housing types and needs and population decreases and increases and changes of rates of growth. Those types of things are useful when you're dealing with comprehensive plan type issues. And to the extent that the data is clear, is useful when you have some discretion, when you're making recommendations or there's something discretionary in front of you. Most of the time, what you're going to get in front of you is, you know, you're going to have lawyers fighting about, you know, per code or not by code. So the type of conversations I'm hearing now are about, they sound like comprehensive plan type issues that would help you when you do your 5-year review.
I was just about to ask you that.
Yeah.
This is something
Which is in
that's gonna
2
be
years.
helpful when we go through this today. This needs to be added, or this needs to be updated, or we need to change the scope of things.
I can't predict what's going to happen in a year and a half, but I'm sensing that this is very good conversations to be having in advance of a 5-year review. You know, we've gone through a lot of changes. When this 2020 plan was being developed, it took a while for it to be developed, and we've gone through a lot of changes. And now all of a sudden, you know, so I haven't been involved in a lot of, you know, wholesale recommendations in 5-year reviews. But I haven't gone through a pandemic with the plan having just been adopted. It took a little while for it to get adopted, and here we are, it's gonna be 2025. And it's a whole lot different than, you know, 2018, you know, when we kind of kicked off.
World a different place.
Well, COVID changed a lot about all of these things. That's really clear from the data. So we need to keep that in mind. Well, I think it's good too that you're saying this, because that means that as we talk about things, you can be helping us identify those things that we might look at. Because I don't know about everybody else here, but I haven't read every page of the comprehensive plan. It's an overwhelming, complicated document. So I think we'll all go back and read every page of it, you know, as we go forward. But
Really just chunk it into
yeah.
manage
What's that?
things that would be good.
You want clip notes? More important. importantly, I want context for that thing
But we could take chunks and go through it and say, what does
and
this mean?
section. Yeah,
What does this actually mean?
yeah, we could do it like a homework assignment. Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay, I'm gonna email everyone a link to the Delaware Population Consortium data, which slices this every which way, but all it does is talks about where the population was, where it is now, where it's projected to go. That's just one tiny piece, but we need that piece.
Yeah.
And it does not get more specific than county.
County is good enough, I think.
What?
Well,
Not in what they, not in what I just looked at, but if you say it does, fine.
It does what?
it'll break it down further.
They have, there are, it depends on what you want. So if you're looking at, housing, dwelling units and population, WillMapGo works with the, population consortium to disaggregate the state and county data down into what's called transportation analysis zone. TAD, or FE, transportation model. So it may not be on the Delaware Population Consortium website, but somewhere, probably at WillMapGo, there are population and housing projections by TAZ. And you can see what's projected, and they're roughly similar to census blocks and census tracts. So the TAZs can get pretty small. So there will be, I haven't looked in a while, but there may be some TAZs that are hopefully closely aligned with the city's boundaries that may even have, that TAZs have projections.
Yeah, I just found it, but at WillMapGo. I will send that also.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, this is not on topic. With Mr. Barthel leaving his post, I know that when I wanted to have information disseminated, or I've had to ask for information, I would go through him first. Or who are we supposed to contact now? There's,
Is there,
when I ask for the information regarding projects that
Do
are
we
in the
go
planning.
with Jeff Bergstrom at the moment, or?
I would first go through the chair. In order to keep staff, city staff from being inundated by
Okay.
various, that's one of the roles that the chair has played in the past, that they were sort of the funnel,
The gatekeeper.
the gatekeeper for, and nothing's perfect, and, you know, we're all individuals and, but that's what I would suggest, is that, information requested from city staff get funneled through the chair. And for now, the chair, you could start with me and I'll figure it out. I don't know the answer to that right now.
And that's just during the interim, because when a new city administrator comes on, it would, I guess, then go through them. Is that big?
This whole city needs process defined and it doesn't have any.
It depends. With Mr. Barthel, he gave me pretty good leeway to work with the chair in disseminating, getting information, working with the chair to get information. I didn't have to clear it with him. A new city administrator may be different.
And I'm guessing that person's not gonna be in place anytime soon.
I can't answer that.
It's a hellacious job. Did you read the job description?
No, but, I mean, I think by the time you advertise it, you interview people. Earliest you'd be is the first of the year, and that's optimistic, I would think.
So.
Just a short path.
Are we able to share resources like reports that Tim just shared amongst the commission?
Not unless, not individually via email. I would, again, if you think that there's some report or information that you think the planning commission should have, run it through the chair and we'll discuss it. And if there's some question, I'll seek legal advice about how and if the information can be shared.
But these are public resources. What Tim just sent out is links on a website. I mean,
But we still have to control, what we're all doing with the data instead of all sharing different data sources and, that's kind of what the chair does. If it ends up being that we have the city administrator and our city citizen says, share away. As long as you're not talking about a specific development, and as long as it's not in a quorum and, have at it. I'm more,
I would say that as a commissioner, I would probably step off the commission if we can't share vetted data.
yeah,
I think that's an overreach on the part of the city. We're commissioners, we're charged with researching. I'm happy to share that with the chair and go through her, but I do think that's an overreach.
well,
That disqualifies our independence. Sorry.
I don't know what I said that was so, overreaching. I just said, we just have to be careful about, the types of data that we share and why are we sharing it. There's always gonna be a development application, in the works. So we just have to be, I'm not suggesting that we tamp down your independence or whatever.
I think we all understand clearly that we can't discuss things on email. But sharing resources, I.
And I guess as long as
Yeah.
everybody's getting it, as opposed to one or two people on the committee,
Correct.
that
Yeah.
would be what would be crucial.
So would the process be, I share with everybody, or the process be, Margot, I think this information is beneficial to the commission, can you distribute it? I guess that's my question. I just want to make sure that there's,
We wanna start with that, or do you wanna run that by the attorney before?
If that's fine for now, and I would ask that you run it by me. And then if I think it needs to rise to the level of seeking legal advice, then I'll ask that.
That'll work. Okay.
As regards the presentation coming up. I would like to ask the chair to ask me to review that presentation prior to presentation to us to make sure that it's concise and to the point, and that we get our technology worked out and all of that kind of
Which
stuff. The
presentation?
one that's coming up from Karen Horton.
Kathy.
Okay.
Karen?
Karen, yeah. We've had presentations in the past that have been so dense that it's been difficult. And I also, if we have to funnel questions through you, that's fine, but I want to make sure that our questions are answered in that presentation.
Well, can't the questions go right to you though?
Yeah.
I think as far as,
And should we have a deadline of when the questions should be into you so that
yes,
there's time for preparation, like obviously not the week before? So,
Like the 10th, November 10th?
I mean, what would you say is, I mean, I want to
Appropriate.
respect her time and not throw something last minute, but at the same time, allow us time to figure out what information we really want to hear about and how it applies to what we're doing.
Yeah, our meeting is on the 27th.
the
So I would think the 10th would
10th would be great.
give her 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And do you want us to send them to Margot and then she just funnel you, like, I don't know, the Google Doc or whatever of all the questions at one time? Is that the best route?
It was never intended that the chair be the, have to, prepare and reorder the questions or.
Well, not reorder, but just have them all in one place so that you're not getting something from me, something from her, like, fit.
Well, if you get stuff to me by the 9th, I'll get it to Chris on the 10th.
But aren't the minutes won't they reflect everything that was stated?
You may think of something.
We have other thoughts.
If you have any thoughts,
Outside of what
Yeah.
we just, okay.
I think of things a lot, I like this building,
I understand that.
not always it's good to think with a fly person. So just to have a central person to say, she's not gonna, obviously, monitor them, she's just probably put them all in a thing and just email them all to you. And there may be duplicates or there may not be, and then you can,
You okay with that, Madam Chairman?
Yes, I am. I can handle that.
so to
Cutting
you
and
by the
pasting is
9th,
good.
and you'll have them to him by the 10th.
Yep.
Sure.
And maybe what we'll do is just test the equipment ahead of time, so we don't spend 10, 20 minutes trying to make the PowerPoint work. Yeah. Kathy. Who would we talk to about getting some training on using this equipment?
City office, Diane Delgado.
It may not have felt like it, but I think we made progress.
I guess lastly, the only last question I have is, do we want to change the meeting time to 7? Even if it's temporarily until we have full commission and resolution on commissioners who don't show up.
Yeah, cause I will try to contact them, but my contacting them is no guarantee they're gonna show up next month.
I mean, do we
And
want to just do it temporarily and just to
Well, do
accommodate
whatever you
travel or?
Tamara, I think what we're trying to accomplish is so that you're not rushing to get here, if in fact you can get here at all, just temporarily. Until we have more commissioners so we can start the meeting
Make sure we have.
at some set time.
I appreciate that. I didn't realize you could not start a meeting without a quorum. I've never been a part of a board where you can't do that. So I apologize, but yeah, at the university, my meetings do run over. And part of my job is with the board there, so.
Well, you're a valued member of our team, so we want you
And
to.
I take this very seriously and I do appreciate that
Yes.
you waited for me and I'm sorry to all of you as well. I did try some other conditions.
So why don't we say next meeting starts at 7 and then we can take it from there?
Yeah, again, I'm gonna caution you on changing times, meeting times are usually fairly sacrosanct and they're usually set in stone for.
Yeah, I was
years and
gonna
years and
ask
years.
you, like, is it in writing and is there a requirement, like, if there's a certain amount of missed meeting, because I am usually here, but those who aren't here, is there,
No,
some type of protocol or anything written, like if you're missing?
that's what we
The-
found. We haven't found anything.
there is no requirement that they attend so many meetings.
So I don't know how we build that in.
The way my board does, you miss 3 in a row, you're out.
There's
I think
nothing,
we just and they're gonna back out.
there's nothing specific in the code about, if you miss X number of meetings. As you know, planning commission members are appointed by, city council, in order to remove a member. This is in the code, city council has to have a public hearing.
I don't think it's gonna come to that. I think these people are gonna be very embarrassed and they'll say, okay.
Well, who knows?
You can't predict what people are gonna say. I would like to just, point out that I do believe council had considered putting some type of attendance similar to what they have on file, and then it was. Can I ask council questions or no? What? It was a public meeting.
They didn't
Was
extend it
it,
to us.
they didn't extend it to commissions?
No, that would take an ordinance, I believe. So we've had I can say, we've had no formal consideration of changing the
Okay.
rules. And my understanding is the rules for planning are different from the rules from all the other commissions because planning is required under state law. And some of the other ones are, and I think Board of Adjustment is, but the tree commission and some of the others aren't as structured as planning because of the state rules.
Okay,
I should have mentioned at the beginning, you derive your authority from the state code.
So the state code should spell out too what our authority is. Okay,
The state code does spell out what your authority is, and it's reflected in the city code under the planning commission section.
so can we change the time for one meeting? I mean, at least, cause that gives us time to
Sure.
iron out, so we'd like to have the next meeting in November at 7 PM. I think that would,
okay.
Second,
Well, yeah, I guess, do I have a motion?
I motion to change the next meeting in
Second
November
again.
to 7 PM.
And if you could, make sure
Excuse me,
posting
no,
this one
excuse me.
time instead of two different times, please.
Do I have a second?
Mhm.
All in favor of meeting at 7 in November? Okay.
And that's on the 27th, right?
Mhm.
If we're done with that part, I can just give you a hack update.
Oh, please.
Yeah. It's not much of an update.
Good.
Are we on to item number 7?
Yeah.
Oh, well, does anybody have any other comments on home ownership rental before we leave that agenda item?
No, I just think when we get the presentation, I think we'll have more questions and be able to have more productive
Okay.
conversation about our role and how we can help the city plan better.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Okay. I think as most of you know, the city council asked me to be the liaison member to HAC. Because Matt was that role before, and he's not on anymore, so they need to identify somebody, and he asked me, and I said, okay. And so I went to the last meeting, which was on October 12th, and I'm sure the minutes of that meeting will be published. Typically, for a HAC meeting, there were 12 agenda items, and all but 2 were resolved before the meeting as tier 1, which means that Layla Hamroon, the architect, and Jeff Bergstrom could approve them, without having to go through the committee having a conversation. There were 2 projects. One is 27 The Strand. They want to build a deck, a second floor deck, which does substantially change the profile and volume of that building. Nobody was particularly opposed to it, but the committee felt that there wasn't enough information, and so we asked them to provide more information to be considered in the next meeting. The other one was at 143 East 2nd Street. It was building a better porch on the back of their house, and that was approved. And that's all we did in that meeting. I have other ideas about things that I think that we should be doing with the Historic Area Commission. As some of you know, I personally have had to come before them many times on our house. And I'd like to see things done differently, but I'll be working with Tara Hayward Olivas on that, according to all the rules that we have to follow. So. And if you thought your paperwork was big this time, you should have seen there. It was like an inch thick of paper. So. That's it.
Update?
Yep.
Do we have someone on the flood?
Sea Level Rise Committee.
Yes, Do we have somebody on that? Are we
No,
supposed?
Gail was on it before.
Gail Sykes, who was the chair of the planning commission, was on it, but I'm not sure.
Are we supposed to have representation on that or no?
It was not written into the resolution. Ms. Sykes is still a member of that. Now transformed to the flood mitigation committee because it's been made permanent. It's no longer a time-limited task force.
Good.
Thank you.
Good idea.
So, but we're not required to have representation on that. Can we ask for them to present things to us? Is that part, because it's running not one part of the planning? I mean, if we had questions, or can they present?
Sure.
I'm just curious, if we can use them as
Resource?
something that could help us with the 5-year review is things that they're putting into play, or things that, like, doesn't that come into the comprehensive plan?
For sure, and there's a lot going on, potentially with that committee in the future, depending on the status of federal funding that I think you would find useful from a land use perspective. Yes, I think you should get periodic updates on what they are doing.
I just think that,
For information, you know, I'm sorry.
well, my whole thing is, we're in this little bubble, and I think we need to expand out to these other commissions and committees so that we can, in processing and putting together or reviewing the comprehensive plan, to make sure that we're aligning with what everybody else is doing and not in this little bubble with, well, we think this is right, but, and then somebody over here has a better idea, or somebody over here, they've discussed doing this instead, and then things don't align.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
really
that's a
think
great
it's good to keep communication, especially in regards to, you know, the flooding and
Yeah.
mitigation and things like that, and
Yeah.
planning.
It's an excellent observation, you know, if you were doing a full update, 10 or 12-year update, you know, that information would naturally get rolled into the new comprehensive plan. But in the 5-year review, you need to know.
But then we have to know what they've already done and how it
Yeah.
applies to the current.
Yeah, so in order to decide whether the 2020 plan is still relevant or needs changes, you would want to have information from someone like the mitigation.
So within the 12 months, we should probably review that section, and then when we're ready to discuss it, have somebody come.
Are we able to make significant changes at the 5-year plan? I mean, is there any rules against that? Because I think we might want to do that, and thinking about the aspects of that to be able to figure out what we do and don't want to do. So,
I don't have the state code in front of me, but that's, I think you have, as a planning commission, I don't think there's any prohibition in the state law that says you can only make small changes.
okay.
That's the kind of the purpose.
But it can also, if anybody's here at the 10-year. I mean, things that you wanna keep track of and keep an eye on. You know, you wanna keep that in the forefront anyway.
Absolutely.
And if we don't have any plans in front of us, like we don't tonight. I think it's to spend some time so that we're not the
Yeah.
last 2 months going through saying, oh my gosh, we didn't do enough to prepare.
And I have a quick question. I know you mentioned it before about like sort of like a timeline or something so that we're not crunching for time trying to get the comprehensive plan review and all of that. Is there like something that's going to be built out for us so that we are making good use of our time? When that time comes, we're in a really good place.
Yeah, we can do that. I think now that we're getting, you know, more of a foundation built, you know, with the planning commission, you know, it dawned on me when I was getting ready to call Karen that, yeah, we've never made a presentation to you about the DDD and the sea level rise task force. Not that you're gonna be able to, you know, substitute your government for what they're doing, but you need to know what's going on as the gatekeeper of the comp plan. So I think that over the next year or so, given the nature of, the agendas, the way they've been, that we can put items on the agenda that will help inform you when the 5-year comes about things that need to be changed or don't need to be changed, and getting housing data, getting a presentation from the housing authority, getting updates from the Sea Level Rise Task Force and Flood Mitigation Committee. Are those exactly the type of things that you would need to know?
Are you able to guide us as far as like what sections of the comp plan
That's right where I'm.
Aaron's
Yeah.
presentation may help us? Like, are you able to say,
Contextualize it.
yeah, to say, this information really applies to this portion of the comprehensive plan? So that maybe I'm gonna read that whole section before I come to the meeting and know how so that way I can visualize her presentation applying to us specifically. Are you able to, because I mean, you know more about what she's gonna present than I do.
Well, I'm not a housing expert, so I will by the time she gets here. So the comprehensive plan has your standard background data section. I don't know what chapters, but there's all sorts of demographics in there about, number of rentals versus home ownership. So, it's not, it's a policy document. It provides background information and then it makes recommendations regarding land use. So I'm going to say that
But aren't there goals in there? We have the goals that, and that's gonna apply to these goals that we have.
you have goals of, you have an implementation. And I'm gonna say that the primary implementation tool of the comprehensive plan is the land use section, is the future land use section. So think about, the information that you're getting relative to how it would impact potential future land use and zoning. Doesn't mean you can't make recommendations on flood mitigation projects, but what will sea level rise do relative to the impacts on potential future land use? And then are there changes in, are there policy statements and goals and objectives and implementation strategies that need to be written into the comp plan that reveal themselves as, in the city code? Because there are recommendations in here, recommendations and implementation items that are sort of capital improvement type items that aren't part of a zoning ordinance that you have less control over. Like, let's spend $50 million on, I'm just making something up. Let's spend $50 million on a seawall because the comp plan says we should, consider the impacts of sea level rise on the city. That's more of a city council thing, but how would the sea level rise conclusions from the committee or data from the committee impact future land use? How would it impact the floodplain ordinance, which is part of, the land use considerations that are before you? So there's a demographic section and the land use section. But you may have heard me say this before, and it's the way the planning commission wanted to do it, and that was fine. That this comprehensive plan just took the zoning that was in effect at the time and created future land use districts around the existing zoning. So it really didn't change. It didn't really recommend changes to the existing zoning because the future land use districts are just, various zoning districts aggregated up into a general future land. So.
Well, we have a potential increase of population of 2,000 to 2,500 people. Maybe that changes the way we think about things going forward. I mean, where population growth in this city over the last 20 years has been about 0. same number of people year after year after year after year, so that, you know, that could lead to those kind of conclusions. Maybe I'll, between now and the next meeting, I'll go through it and suggest some chapterlets or some ways to look at it. I'd be happy to share that with you first. And then we can have a chapter, a meeting kind of thing or something like that.
Has everybody printed out a copy? Or
You can get a copy from the city.
Yeah,
that's what I was just thinking that.
Of course, I wish
get
mine
them
was
to-
bound in a binder like that.
Well, that was just thinking, I was gonna
Mine
ask them if
just
I
spiral
could,
like this scribble in line.
if I can ask them for some copies, like, who would want to, if I can get those, who would want
I
one?
have one.
I have a copy, but it's in a plastic, it sits one of these things and some of my pages are falling out.
Is that a yes? You would like a three?
I would.
You would too?
Find it, but
Mine's falling apart because they didn't put anything on the back of it.
I think we differ. I think,
Gonna fight with it.
They didn't put like a plastic on the back.
Well, that'll-
So like mine
Keep
trying
trying
to make.
Okay. Tim, do you want one?
He said.
I'll look for the quote.
I mean, I just don't want to scribble in mine
Okay.
and highlight.
Anyone else? Any other commissioners have any comments before we move to close? Chris, thank you so much for helping educate us.
Your patience.
to get more in front of you, and now that we're getting, you know, our feet under us, and that was why I reached out to Karen.
No,
That's really good.
That's good. Okay. I have no further comments either. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Kristen Zumar motions to adjourn.
And give second.
All in favor? Okay,
Thank you.
see you guys November 27th. If not before.
Not before.
All questions by the